I was in the warehouse fixing a busted intake valve on one of our machines when the call came in. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. Wish I hadn't. Jason Taylor, a cold voice asked. This is Deputy Marsh from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. We need you to come down to the station. My hands were covered in grease. My heart was already in the dirt. Why? It's about your company. We have a few questions about recent financial activity. They were polite about it. Let me clean up. Let me drive myself in. But the moment I sat down in that concrete-walled room, I knew something was wrong. I knew this wasn't some misunderstanding. This was a setup. My name is Jason Taylor. I'm 34 years old. I live outside Tucson. I built a small logistics firm out of nothing, just a beat-up pickup, a rented storage unit, and a girl who said she believed in me. Her name was Claire. We met 6 years ago. She was working the counter at a parts distributor I used. Sharp, pretty, quick on numbers. I hired her part-time to help with invoicing. We built it all together. Orders, suppliers, contracts. The name on the company? Taylor and Knox. Her last name. Because I thought we were in this together. While I chased clients, she kept the books. While I pulled double shifts, she handled payroll. At first, it worked. We were broke, but we were building. I trusted her with everything. Even my passwords. Big mistake. Because while I was working nights, Claire was working on betrayal. And she wasn't doing it alone. My father, Bill Taylor, ex-military, now semi-retired, always said he believed in my hustle. Said he was proud I hadn't gone corporate. Said he respected what I was building. He lied too. Because the sheriff's deputy slid a document across the table, a new registration certificate for Taylor and Knox filed 3 weeks ago. My name? Nowhere on it. Just Claire Knox and William Taylor. My father. The two people I trusted most in the world had erased me. And that was just the start. I walked out of the station with a strange kind of silence in my head. Not rage. Not sadness. Just silence. That deep, heavy quiet you get when something you thought was solid turns out to be hollow. Claire didn't answer my calls. Not that I expected her to. I didn't text. Didn't leave a voicemail. I just drove. To the one person I thought I could still trust, my younger brother, Micah. Ex-attorney. Semi-sober. Brilliant when he wants to be. He took one look at the paperwork I laid out on his dining table and muttered, "Damn, Jace. They cooked this clean." The signatures were all legit. Filed through the state's business registry. Registered agent changed. Company address rerouted. My name removed from everything. The company bank account? Drained. And here's the worst part. The new LLC they formed still carried the Taylor and Knox brand. They just modified it legally. Shifted ownership. Quietly. Precisely. Like I never existed. What do you want to do? Micah asked. I'm not calling them. I'm not confronting them. I'm not burning down what I built. Okay, he said slowly like he wasn't sure where this was going. I'm going to get it back. All of it. Clean. Legal. Documented. Micah leaned back and crossed his arms. You're talking war. No, I said standing. I'm talking paperwork. Because Claire may have known how to file forms and shuffle documents. And my father may have had military discipline and charm. But I'd spent 6 years building every operational system in that company. I wrote the contracts. I managed the vendor chains. I negotiated the exclusives. And I'd been smart enough to keep copies. Off-site. Secured. Time-stamped. They stole the name. But I owned the structure. And I was going to remind them of that one notarized letter at a time. I didn't show up at the office. Didn't try to talk my way back in. I didn't even check the cameras. I still had admin access to. Claire probably changed all the passwords by now. Instead, I made a list. Vendor contracts, 47 of them, all signed under my name. Lease agreements I personally co-signed for the warehouse and office suite. Trademark rights filed 3 years ago, not by Claire. By me. Using a separate business entity I controlled. Then there were the exclusivity deals. One with a parts supplier in Nevada. One with a freight company out of El Paso. Both depended on me, not Claire, not William Taylor Logistics, or whatever new name they were stitching together. Me. I pulled out my fireproof lockbox. Inside were flash drives. Password protected, offline, backed up. Every revision of every agreement we'd ever signed. I kept it as a habit. Claire used to tease me about being paranoid. Good. Because paranoia's what was going to win this. Micah helped me draft a cease and desist, dry legal language but packed with teeth. We included the trademark filing and pointed out breach of contract risks with current client accounts. Attached were copies of Claire's own signature on joint ownership filings from 2 years ago. You can't just erase someone from their own company. Not if they've kept receipts. I had. We sent the letter certified. Made sure it had to be signed for. We didn't send it to the office, we sent it directly to Claire's condo. One I used to pay half the mortgage on. By noon the next day, she'd opened it. And by 6 that evening, my father called me for the first time in 4 months. "Let's talk, son." I didn't pick up. Because this wasn't going to be a family meeting. This wasn't about feelings or apologies. This was about leverage. And I wasn't done stacking it. 3 days passed. No response to the cease and desist. No lawyer letters. No emails. Then Micah forwarded me an alert. A new business entity had been filed with the state. Knox and Taylor Logistics. They flipped the name. Thought it would duck the trademark. Amateurs. I didn't respond. I let them keep digging. Instead, I made a quiet visit to Mendoza Freight, our biggest shipping partner. I'd built the relationship with Diego Mendoza myself. He was the kind of guy who didn't care about pitch decks. He cared about reliability, invoices paid on time, and trucks that ran hot in the summer. I walked into his office without calling ahead. He looked up and grinned. "Jason," he said, standing. "You finally back from vacation?" I gave a half smile. "Something like that." He poured me coffee without asking. "Claire came by last week," he said, sitting down again. "Told me you stepped away. Said you were burnt out." "Burnt out?" That was the story now. "I didn't step away," I said. "They stole it. Refiled ownership behind my back. My own father helped." Diego leaned back, silent. I slid a folder across the desk, copies of the contracts between us, signed by me with a non-transferability clause highlighted in yellow. He flipped through them. His face didn't change. "You want me to pull out?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want you to sit tight. Let them think everything's normal. But when they breach, and they will, I want to be notified." He nodded slowly. "What's the play, Jason?" "Legal," I said. "Slow. Precise. No explosions." He smiled at that. "You always were the boring one. Boring gets the job done." We shook hands. And just like that, my quiet strategy was in motion. Because while Claire and my father were rebranding and emailing clients with their shiny new pitch, I was collecting more than evidence. I was collecting allies. And one of them had just forwarded me something that changed the entire game. An email. From Claire. To my father. Subject line, "Jason won't see this coming." The email was forwarded to me by a subcontractor we'd used in Yuma. Claire had made the mistake of CCing him on a string she meant to keep private. He'd been quiet about it, said it felt off. It was a short chain. 2 messages. But it was everything I needed. "Claire. Jason still thinks this is about the business. He has no clue what we've actually been moving. Don't worry, he won't see this coming." Then my father, replying. "Let's keep it that way. Once the contracts roll over, he's out for good. Just keep his name out of your mouth. If anyone asks, he sold his shares." I read it twice. Then once more. There it was. This wasn't just a corporate betrayal. It wasn't about pushing me out and stealing my seat at the table. They were hiding something. Moving something. And they'd been using my company, my name, my reputation to do it. I called Micah. "You were right," I said. "This goes deeper." He didn't ask what. Just said, "Come over." By that night, we were cross-referencing shipping manifests, the ones still accessible from a vendor portal Claire hadn't shut down. And we saw it. Pallets listed as auto components. Going to addresses that didn't match any registered clients. One drop-off listed in an empty strip mall outside Phoenix. Another near Nogales, close to the border. Both shipped under my credentials. My DOT number. My company's license. They were laundering something through the business. Something they didn't want seen. And when I started asking questions, they cut me out before I found it. It was bigger than theft now. Bigger than betrayal. Micah looked at me across the table. "You want to go to the cops?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I want to know how far this goes. I want the whole picture. Not just enough to stop it, enough to end it." Micah studied me. "You're playing long." I nodded. "They buried me," I said. "Now I'm digging back." By the end of that week, I had records. Dates, times, bill of lading documents, GPS logs, everything quietly copied, all pointing to Claire and my father moving shipments under shell contracts to unknown drop points. Claire had renamed the internal systems, changed the passwords, but not the architecture because she didn't know how deep I'd embedded redundancy. 6 months ago, I'd written a subroutine for our logistics portal, a fallback protocol in case of cyber attack. What it really did was record every outgoing invoice to a separate cloud drive. A drive she'd never even know existed. It had everything. Invoices to fake vendors, internal emails, unusual payment schedules. And one contract stood out, an LLC out of Nevada called Sunyard Services. It had no website, no tax history, and received shipments weekly under the label refrigeration components. I followed the paper trail. Sunyard Services was registered to a P.O. box. Its listed point of contact? Mark E. Knox, Claire's older brother. A name I hadn't heard in years. Last I knew, he'd done 18 months for wire fraud and fled the state. Claire always said they weren't close. Apparently that changed. I didn't confront her. Didn't message my father. I just met with Micah again and laid out everything. "This is criminal," he said. "If you sit on this too long, you become part of it." "I'm not sitting," I said. I was preparing. The goal wasn't to make noise. It was to make it undeniable. I contacted a private investigator I'd used once years back for a competitor that tried to poach our staff. Discreet, reliable ex-federal. I handed him a binder. "I need every detail on Sunyard, and I need it quiet." He flipped through the pages, then looked up. "This isn't business drama. This is federal." "I know," I said. He nodded. "You'll have it in 10 days. That gave me time to prepare my final move. Because once this blew open, there wouldn't be second chances. And the moment that file was complete, Claire and my father weren't going to lose just the company. They were going to lose everything. 9 days later, the PI called. "Got what you asked for," he said. "And then some." We met in a diner just off I-10, the kind with weak coffee and strong silence. He slid me a folder, thick and sealed. I didn't open it right away. "You're sure it's solid?" I asked. He nodded. "Sunyard's a ghost company. No employees. No real office. But it's received over $480,000 in goods in the past 6 months. All routed through Taylor and Knox." "Who's behind it?" He tapped the folder. "Claire's brother Mark. But the payments? They're being funneled through offshore accounts in Belize and Cyprus. Your dad co-signed one of the shell accounts under a trust he thought was buried." He paused. "This isn't small-time fraud, Jason. This looks like smuggling. And your company's name is all over it." I left with the folder and drove straight to Micah's. He skimmed the documents, his face growing tighter with every page. "They're done," he said. "Not yet," I said. "First, we clean the record." We spent the next 48 hours compiling a master file, notarized contracts, timestamp backups, corporate filings, and now, federal-level evidence of cross-border financial activity and corporate fraud. Micah packaged it into a digital folder and set it on a USB drive. We drafted 2 letters, one for the IRS Criminal Investigations Division, one for the Department of Transportation's Office of Inspector General. We attached everything: names, dates, routing numbers, falsified manifests. Then we made one more copy. For the board of Taylor and Knox's largest client, an aerospace supplier that couldn't afford the bad press. That was the kill shot. Because this wasn't about revenge through violence or exposure online. This was about precision collapse. Claire and my father wanted to erase me. Instead, I'd make it so their version of the company couldn't get a meeting in this state ever again. I dropped the letters off in person. No return address. No phone number. Just documentation. Then I waited. 3 days later, the phone rang. Not Claire. Not my father. A number I didn't recognize. But the voice on the other end? Federal. "Mr. Taylor?" the voice asked. Calm. Measured. Government. "Yes. This is Agent Russell, Homeland Security Investigations. We'd like to speak with you about a report we received involving a logistics operation under your name." I didn't ask how they found me. They always do. "Understood," I said. "When and where?" They met me at Micah's office, neutral ground. 2 agents, plain suits, no drama. One of them was already holding my USB drive, the one I'd dropped anonymously. I watched as they unpacked everything. The fake contracts, the vendor shell game, the money laundering across borders, the falsified bills of lading attached to my old company name. They had questions. I answered them. Direct, calm, complete. Not once did I raise my voice. Not once did I guess. Just gave them the facts with documents to match. At the end of it, Agent Russell leaned back and asked, "Did you know what they were moving?" "No," I said. "But I knew it wasn't auto parts." He nodded. "We're going to need you to stay reachable." "I'm not going anywhere." They left with boxes. Boxes of Claire and my father's empire now under a microscope. By the next morning, I started getting calls. Vendors. Clients. One by one, they'd heard through whispers, compliance officers, or their legal departments. Taylor and Knox contracts were being paused. Payments frozen. Partnerships under review. Claire must have felt the shift because that afternoon, her name lit up my phone for the first time in weeks. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Jason, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. My lawyer says there's a way to fix this." And finally, "I don't know what you think you've done, but you're not innocent either." I stared at that last one for a long time. And then I typed back the only message I'd send her. I stayed silent. "You filled in the blanks. That was your mistake." Claire kept texting. Half denial, half desperation. "I didn't know what Mark was doing. Your father handled that part, not me. They can't prove anything." Classic strategy, deflect, divide, deny. But it was too late. Because while she was scrambling, the system she tried to rig was closing in. Micah got the call 2 days later, official notice from the IRS. They'd opened a joint investigation with Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation. Charges pending. I didn't cheer, didn't drink, didn't gloat. I just sat in my truck outside the old warehouse, now shuttered, padlocked, and empty, and thought about how many hours I'd worked under that roof. How many nights I slept on a cot in the back, trying to make ends meet. Claire had tried to rewrite the ending. My father had handed her the pen. But I kept the ledger. And now the pages were being audited line by line. That evening I drove to my mother's house. I hadn't seen her since this started. She opened the door with tired eyes and no small amount of shame. "He told me you'd stepped away," she said quietly. "That you didn't want the responsibility anymore." I nodded once. That's what he wanted everyone to believe. She looked down. "I didn't know, Jason." I swear. I believed her. Because my father was always good at talking. And I was always better at doing. Before I left, she pressed something into my hand, a box. "These were yours." He kept them in the garage. Inside, the original founding documents. Bank statements with my name. Contracts I'd signed, now obsolete, but proof of origin. He hadn't destroyed them. Just hidden them. Like I was a risk to be buried. I thanked her and drove off. I didn't need the box. I already had copies. But seeing it, holding it, that was something else. They tried to erase me. But I'd never been a footnote. I was the spine of the story. Within a week, the fallout started to spread. Claire's brother Mark arrested in Nevada. Customs violations, wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud. His mugshot was already circulating in industry group chats before the press even picked it up. I didn't say a word. Just watched the pieces fall in real time. Then came the knock on my door. Not the feds. A man in a suit. Mid-50s. Looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in months. He introduced himself as the legal rep for Grenshaw Supply Group, our third largest client before the split. He extended a letter signed by the board. They were terminating their contract with Taylor and Knox effective immediately. "Too much risk," he said, not unkindly. "Too many questions." I nodded. He hesitated. "But they're willing to reopen negotiations. If you're rebuilding." I didn't answer right away. Because I hadn't decided yet if I was. I'd spent so long planning the quiet collapse, I hadn't pictured what came after. But then he said one more thing. "They didn't trust the name. They trusted you." That night, I called Diego Mendoza. "You still shipping for them?" I asked. "Nope," he said. "They tried. But the new compliance team pulled the plug after that Homeland call." "What's next for you?" "I don't know yet." "Start something," he said. "And let me know when you do." Claire had the name. My father had the documents. But I had something they never understood. The reputation. And reputations, when built right, survive the fire. Especially when you're the one holding the match. 2 weeks later, Taylor and Knox was functionally dead. Vendors withdrew. Clients cut ties. The bank froze their business accounts after federal subpoenas landed on their desk. The last gasp came through Micah, a motion filed by Claire's attorney requesting a cease to defamatory actions from me. It was almost funny. She'd orchestrated theft, fraud, and felony transport under my name and now wanted to silence me with civil paperwork? We sent a response, brief, factual, and brutal. All documentation attached. My favorite line was the closing paragraph. Our client has made no public statements. He hasn't needed to. Because that's the thing about real revenge, it doesn't arrive loud. It arrives signed, sealed, and admissible in court. That same day, I drove to a small strip office 20 minutes outside Tucson. I'd signed the lease 2 days earlier. No sign, no logo. Just a desk, a laptop, and a quiet coffee pot. I filed the paperwork that afternoon, Knox Logistics Group, LLC. Same field, same infrastructure. But now it was mine again, rebuilt from clean slate. No ghosts, no partners, no betrayal hiding in the break room. The first call I made was to Diego. The second was to Grenshaw. The third I didn't have to make. It came in on its own. A voicemail from a voice I never expected. Jason, it's your father. Pause. I didn't know everything Claire was doing, but I knew enough. And I let it happen. I thought I was securing a future. Another pause. I was wrong. I didn't call back, because sometimes silence isn't revenge. It's a boundary. And this time it stayed up. I replayed the voicemail twice. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear what wasn't being said. No apology. No accountability. Just regret for getting caught. Typical. I didn't save the message. Didn't return the call. Didn't send a response through Micah. Because what he did wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a choice, one he made in meetings, in filings, in signatures. Over and over. And now, with the investigation growing, he wanted absolution from the one person he couldn't manipulate. I'd spent my life trying to earn his respect. He spent 6 months trying to erase me. We were done. Meanwhile, Claire was bleeding out in silence. I got word from a supplier in El Paso that she tried to set up under another name. Knox Warehousing Group. It was denied by the state due to pending investigation. Federal pressure. She was boxed in, legally, financially, reputationally. That was the real revenge. No screaming. No confrontations. Just locked doors and cold shoulders from the same people she thought she could charm. Micah called later that night. Grenshaw's legal signed the engagement letter. They're on board. Good, I said. And you've got a voicemail from Mendoza, he added. Wants to know when your new routes go live. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the paperwork. Blank invoice templates. Clean EIN. A phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. I wasn't rebuilding. I was replacing. Every contact they tried to steal was walking right back through my door and closing theirs behind them. Within 6 weeks, Knox Logistics Group had more active contracts than Taylor and Knox ever did in its first year. Not because I undercut them. Because I didn't have to. Clients were calling me. Not for deals, for clarity. For structure. For someone who didn't vanish when the invoices cleared. I gave them that. No pitch. No big launch. Just execution. Meanwhile, Claire's name was showing up in articles now. Industry sites. Quiet mentions of pending investigations and former executives under review. Nothing explosive, just enough to kill trust in every room she walked into. Her LinkedIn disappeared. Then the company website went offline. Taylor and Knox, once the name on 100 contracts, was now a cautionary tale in regional business forums. The final blow didn't come from the courts. It came from a government compliance bulletin listing companies under active investigation blacklisted for contract bidding. And there it was. Page 3. Taylor and Knox Freight Services. Barred. Frozen. Untouchable. Micah sent me the PDF with one line. Checkmate. I didn't respond. Just forwarded it to Diego, then closed my laptop and went for a drive. No destination. Just the open road and the dry Arizona air. I passed the old warehouse once. Empty now. A faded for lease sign in the window. Claire tried to make that building her empire. But the structure was always mine. I just let her borrow the keys. By the end of the fiscal quarter, Knox Logistics Group was operating across 4 states. Smaller, leaner, but cleaner. Every contract signed under my own hand. Every vendor vetted twice. Every shipment traceable, legal, solid. I didn't hire fast. Didn't build flashy. No receptionists. No pitch decks. Just results. The kind that clients don't question because they don't have to. Micah, now part-time general counsel for the company, kept my books locked tighter than Fort Knox. We ran lean. We ran silent. And we didn't just recover. We replaced. Taylor and Knox, once a name clients returned calls for, was now radioactive. Their last remaining contracts collapsed after a quiet leak from a compliance officer we knew. The feds had no interest in saving a company used as a shell. Claire tried one last pivot. A personal rebrand, online consulting for female entrepreneurs. Fizzled within days, because her reputation had followed her. And reputations don't fade when you bury them under lies. They follow you. And my father? He took a plea. Wire fraud, accessory to interstate transport violations. Lesser charges in exchange for cooperation. I didn't attend the hearing. Didn't need to. The only courtroom I cared about was the court of consequence. And his verdict? Exile. He didn't just lose a son. He lost his name. Because the only thing left carrying the Taylor name in business was me. The email came in quietly. No subject line. No signature. Just one line. I never meant to hurt you, Claire. It was the first message since the fallout. Not a phone call. Not an apology. Just a vague attempt to reach for something that no longer existed. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She didn't just take the company. She took the years, the late nights, the belief that we were building something real. But in the end, she gave me something better. A clean slate, a reputation unshaken, and the kind of silence that makes people wonder how deep the damage went, and who survived it. I walked into my new office that morning. Smaller space, no receptionist, no framed mission statement, just a map of the Southwest pinned with shipping lanes. A desk with my name on it. Jason Taylor, owner, Knox Logistics Group. The same week Claire's assets were seized, we signed a 5-year distribution deal with a medical supply company out of Albuquerque. Value? 7 figures. Terms? All in my favor. Because now, when people talk about reliability, they don't mention the company Claire tried to steal. They mention me. And my father? His name hasn't come up once. He didn't just lose the company. He lost the only legacy he had left. So no, I didn't take revenge. I just removed myself and built something better. They never saw me unravel their game. They never heard me coming. And by the time it all fell apart, I was already gone.